Hello everyone, Storm101 here. Today we'll be checking out my February 22, 2022 forecast. Here we'll be checking some weather model data and some of the factors that could lead to a certain type of pattern as we get into February as well. Of course, we'll be checking out my forecast as well. Before we get started though, if you guys do like weather related content, you can always subscribe to my channel. We do this stuff here all the time on this channel here as well. And oh yeah, by the way, today is a double upload day, so expect another update with our upcoming winter system later today. But I just want to get this out of the way really quick because I know I've gotten some questions about February, especially from the early late to spring of February video as well. So I want to go ahead and kind of get this out of the way really quick as well. So that's something I want to know as well. Then again, today is a double upload day. So we're going to get started with sea surface temperatures. This is one of the first things I usually check out when we do a monthly forecast. And these do really influence the pattern. There's a couple things we got going on. One of those is that we still got this negative PDO in place. And what that does is keep some of the colder air up here. However, there's something else that's been preventing from that pattern. That's what's known as the PNA. It's been slightly on the positive side throughout most of January. That's why it's been more of a cold and snowy pattern, despite the other tail connections working against that factor. But I do believe at some point, I do believe maybe if we get into late February, we may change that and maybe flip the PNA. We'll check out some of the model guidance for that in a little bit. Another thing that we got going on, we got a La Nina going on, and it's likely going to persist through February. We also got slightly above normal sea surface temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico and even for parts of the Atlantic. Those will also be important as well. Not only those will lead to a good moisture supply, but for areas up along the East Coast, if we do see a good storm develop, these warmer sea surface temperatures is a good fuel for that storm. So if another low does come off the coast, it could try to intensify as well. Similar to what we had a couple days ago, but maybe not as strong as that as well. That's one of the factors that led to that rapid intensification, and that was the very warm sea surface temperatures. All right, let's check out some weather model data. This is the Cfs model. This was overdone with the warmth for January here, but you do notice a couple things here on this map, and one of those things is that you got troughing across Greenland and Canada. It still does lead to a decent cold air supply because even though you got troughing over Greenland, there is some ridging not too far away off to the southeast of Greenland. You also got big time blocking in the parts of the Pacific here off the northwest coast, and it goes up into Alaska as well. So that's going to help push up this cold air further south here. However, it's not going to be very persistent though. I do expect at least the Midwest and the Northern Plains to stay in this colder air type activity for a longer duration than anybody else. So I do believe everywhere else we are going to experience some brief warm-ups with this pattern here, but they're not going to last long. Next thing you know it, another round of cold air will move in as well. So even with a positive NAO and also a positive AO, we still got a pretty decent pattern going on here because this positive PNA certainly helps bring some of that cold air a little bit further south as well. Otherwise, if we did not have this positive PNA, then there would be a lot of warmth in the eastern U.S. There certainly will be a lot of warmth out there. This is the CFS model, and it is pretty similar. However, it is a little bit more aggressive with the ridging off the east. And that's something we got to pay attention to as well, because if this positive PNA or this ridge continues to move off to the west, this ridge here is going to expand further to the west, and that could engulf parts of the east coast as well. So that could lead to some warmth out there as well. If we do go back here, here's the differences here. The CFS is a little bit stronger with that positive PNA, but the Kansas model is a little bit stronger with the colder air up here as well. Let's talk about, let's see. MSOP and normal anomalies. This kind of tells you where your low pressures and high pressure systems are going to be. And you do see here, there's certainly going to be a lot of high pressure for parts of western U.S., so it's certainly going to stay on the drier side out there. But there is some ridging going on parts of the East Coast as well, which is going to be a little bit interesting. But I do notice as well that it does back off when you get down to parts of the central U.S., which could mean there is going to be some low pressure systems in these areas out here as well, which could also mean a little bit of an active pattern as well. And here's the CFS model. And you know what? It's pretty similar. Off the west coast with that ridge, things are going to stay dry for most of the western U.S. with a pattern like this. Now, it's not really going to be warm because you are getting a northwest flow. You're on the east side of the ridge. However, it's going to stay dry for the most part anyway. There may be a pattern change coming up late February for that. There's also some ridging along the east coast, but it isn't much. But with all this being kind of neutral, this kind of tells you that there is going to be an active pattern out there. This is your precipitation anomalies, and like I said, for the western U.S., it's likely going to stay dry. But for areas that's likely to experience the most of the weather, or at least for active weather anyway, is probably going to be for parts anywhere from the Texas-Arkansas region through the Tennessee Valley, the Ohio Valley, up into the Northeast is where I do expect most activity. Because not only this pattern here does support some active weather for those areas, but even for a potential pattern change, areas a little bit further southwest still support some active weather. So for anybody that lives in the parts of the Ohio Valley, maybe down back in the parts of Texarkana region, you're probably going to experience some active weather throughout most of February. Either way, if a pattern change happens or not, it's likely to stay on the active side for you guys. So Cfs Model does show above average precipitation for that reason. It's also showing quite a bit of dry air going on in the southeast. That may be a little bit too aggressive with that. But here's the CFS model, and definitely some similarities here as well. A little bit more aggressive with the drier air in the western U.S., which I do have to agree with. And you definitely see here some of your most active weather is looking to be for the Texas-Arkansas region, for parts of the Midwest, Great Lakes, Ohio Valley, eventually up to the north parts of the Northeast as well. And I want to backtrack here a little bit here. Let's talk about temperatures. So this is the temperature knowledge from the Kansas model. You can see here, there's a lot of cold on this map. And honestly, I do think for the western U.S., in my opinion, I think it's going to be closer to average. I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of warmth out there. But then again, I do think it's going to be closer to average. But I could definitely see a decent chunk of parts of the central and eastern U.S. be on the cooler side. And really the only areas that has probably a better opportunity to be on the warmer side will probably be in parts of the southeast here. And maybe getting along parts of the east coast as well. Could be on the slightly warmer side. And then again, the Kansas model was overdone with the warmth, so that kind of tells you something there. Now the CFS model, it's a different story. It's a little bit more aggressive with the warmth here. It's got a lot of warm air going on in the southeast into parts of the northeast, which that might be a little bit overdone, but it does seem a little bit reasonable as well. It's also average across parts of the western U.S. I do believe it's a little bit underdone with the cold air in the Midwest and parts of the Dakotas as well. I think it's going to be a little bit colder than that. But this is the GFS ensembles here, and this kind of takes you through February. So at the beginning of February and early February, we are going to experience a little bit of warm up in the southeast. But you do notice there's a lot of cold air off to the west. And as we kind of play this through here, there's going to be a lot of cold air through parts of a good chunk of the United States. Really, the only areas that could be on the slightly warmer side, maybe for parts of the Four Quarter States, Nevada, and even got another area for parts of Florida and Georgia. However, as you get towards late February, then that pattern change like I was talking about will begin to show up. Now you're starting to see some ridging develop across the eastern U.S., which is definitely possible as well. This is when that P&A may start to flip as well. which let's check out the 500 millibar height anomalies. You can see here, if we go a little bit early on, let me actually do this a 5-day average. It's easier to kind of look at this at a 5-day average. As we kind of back this up into early February, you do notice here's your positive P&A still ongoing. But wherever we get into late February, you do notice it starts to move back off to the west, getting deeper into Alaska. Still some blocking, however, it does lead to some ridging across parts of the eastern U.S., especially when it starts to fade away. And I believe at around this point here, this is when I believe the negative PDO starts to take control, whenever that ridge starts to fade away. And with the other tail connections like the AO and the NAO, they do support this type of pattern as well. It's just because of that one tail connection that's making us having this cold and snowy pattern throughout January as well, which we'll talk a little bit more about those tail connections here in a little bit as well. So here's another forecast model here. This is the NMME. That's in the northwest corner there of your screen. And it has a lot of warmth out there, and also that's an overkill with the warmth. You do notice a lot of other models are a very similar thing when it comes to warmer weather. And then again, I think it's an overkill with the warmth, especially across the central and the eastern U.S. But hey, there's a chance we may see a pattern like that in late February. You never know. But that may change though. That's something I should note. When I talk about late February, it's far out. It could change. Just something I want to put out there that it could change. It's hard to predict on the second half of the month than the first half when I do these monthly forecasts. That's something I should note there real quick. But then again, I think the MME is a little bit overdone. Okay, let's talk about a little bit more about tail connections. So this is the NAO, and you do notice here we've been in a positive NAO for a while, and you would think that we should be warmer. Yeah, we probably should be. There's another tail connection out there that's preventing for that to happen. Here's the AO. It's also going to be staying on the positive side as well. We do briefly go negative though, which is going to lead to a lot of cold air in the parts of the central U.S., especially down to parts of Texas. However, it does rebound into the positive side. And this goes as far out as mid-February as well. That's something I should note as well. And you'll think as well, especially when you get to a positive AO, that will also support a warmer pattern. You're right, but there's that one tail connection that's been preventing from that, and that's the P&A. This is associated out in the western U.S. in the parts of the Pacific. We've been in this positive P&A for a while, ever since the beginning, pretty much the beginning of January, almost. We've been in this positive P&A. This has been keeping us in a cold and snowy pattern fashion. But you do notice here that it does begin to drop, getting towards the neutral phase. That's when I think we may see a potential pattern change, because whenever this P&A flips, there's going to be a decent amount of milder air in the eastern U.S. at that point, because these other tail conditions definitely do not support colder air. But this one here does. And whenever this P&A starts to flip, we may get a little bit of December again. I do believe that February is going to be a month where we get a mix of January, which is probably going to be the first half, and then for the second half, we get a little mix of December. It's going to be quite an active stretch. It's going to be an active month, and it's going to be quite a roller coaster, I do believe, in my opinion here as well. But this could change. On the last video that when we talked about in early February, we thought that it was going to go negative, but it does look like we are going to delay that. So in that case, it does look like the colder and snowy pattern will continue into the first half of February. And then maybe it will change into the second half of February. We'll see. Time will tell on that. But honestly, I do believe that may happen. Okay, this is the MJO, the Madden Julian Oscillation. I think that's how you pronounce it, if I'm correct on that. But anyway, this is his forecast. This is also important as well. Currently, we are neutral, so it's not really affecting the weather pattern. However, it does go into phase 3. What does phase 3 look like? Well, phase 3 looks to be this. Now, it's not going to look exactly like this, but this is kind of based off an average here. This red box right here is phase 3. It's got a lot of cold air out there. Now, I don't think it's going to be that cool in the western U.S. I think it's going to be closer to average, but I think the rest of the U.S., I think it seems pretty good in my opinion there. I think there is going to be a point in time where a good chunk of the United States will be slightly cooler, but it's not going to be very excessive cold air or anything. I think most of your cold air will probably stay up in the parts in the Midwest, I do believe, um, as well. But however, as we get deeper into February, things start to change a little bit. You notice these models here do go into phase 4. So what does phase 4 look like? It's actually pretty different. So phase 4 is right here in this red box. And you do notice there's a lot of warmth on that map. And it will have to depend on if the PNA does flip. If it does flip, we are going to see quite a bit of warmth in the eastern US. No doubt about it, because when you compare it to the other teleconnections like the PDO, NAO, AO, they don't support that. But the PNA does continue. It's going to be more of a roller coaster ride, I would say. You get cooldowns, you get warm ups. And that's kind of like a roller coaster ride if that PNA continues to stay positive. If it does change over to negative, expect a pretty good warm up in the eastern US. That's something I would expect there as well if the PNA does flip. And it does go into a little bit into phase 5 and a little bit into 6. So let's kind of check that out. Phase 5 and 6 is no better. A lot of warmth is showing on here. So at some point, I do believe whenever that PNA starts to flip, wherever that occurs, I think that's where we're going to see a lot of warmth in the eastern US. And that's going to kind of give you some vibes from December of 2021, which I know we had very active severe weather. I don't think the warm air will be as bad, but I do believe there's going to be quite a bit of warmth out there, especially if that PNA does flip. That's been really controlling the pattern so far this year has been the PNA. Okay, this is the cloud predictors forecast here for February, and honestly, they may be a little bit excessive with the warmth, but it's definitely understandable. And respectfully, I can see the eastern U.S. to be on the slightly warmer side. I think the probability is a little high, but either way, I can definitely see parts of the eastern U.S. being on the slightly warmer side for February. But I do believe the core of the code is going to be in the upper Midwest, and honestly, I think they're a little bit underdone with the cold air, in my opinion. Also, I don't think there's going to be a whole lot of cold air in the Northwest, especially early on where it's going to be closer average as well. But maybe later down the road in the second half of February when we possibly see that pattern change, yeah, things can certainly get a little bit colder up there. There's also another area of warmer air as well, which is in the desert southwest, which I do agree with that as well. The precipitation outlook is something I do agree as well, but I don't really think the upper Midwest will see much way of above average precipitation. I think it'll look more like this when it comes to precipitation instead of going north like that. And they've not been very successful with that. I'm going to be honest with you. It's been drier up there over the last couple weeks or so. But they also do have above normal precipitation across parts of Montana, which honestly that might be a little bit overdone as well, in my opinion. But I can understand that as well. Okay, so putting all those factors together, here's my forecast. Yeah, there's not going to be a whole lot of extremes here. Well, with the extremes, it can lead to more closer to average for a lot of people if you're going to see a lot of extremes. Now, if it's a very persistent pattern, yeah, there's going to be more colors showing up in here. But then again, it's still some uncertainty here, especially whenever the PNA. That's something we don't really quite know yet, but I do believe that PNA is going to flip in late February at least. And that's what I think as well. But then again, on this map here, you don't see a whole lot of extremes. But you do notice here, I do have parts of the eastern U.S. in a slightly above average region for temperatures. That does go as far north as Long Island, but it kind of stays along the east coast. There's another area slightly above average temperatures, and that's the desert southwest. But I think most of the cold here is probably going to be in the parts of the Midwest, and that could extend as far south as parts of the Central Plains and maybe in the parts of the Ohio Valley as well. I might be a little bit too aggressive with that. We'll see. And then again, from the Northwest, Northeast, and the Southern Plains, and most of the Rockies, I think temperatures are going to be closer to average for February. Precipitation. A little bit different in the CPC's forecast, right? So the western U.S., I think it's generally going to be on the drier side, especially when you get into California. That's where we have a zone of below average precipitation. That does include parts of Nevada. We got two areas aside below average. You got one in the parts of the upper Midwest, and you got one for the southern half of Florida. And we do have a zone for above average precipitation. That goes from, if we zoom in, from northeastern Arkansas up into parts of the lower Ohio Valley. It really doesn't matter in that area if there's going to be a pattern change or not. Either way, it's going to stay active down there. I think that's where most of your activity is going to be. It's in that region. But areas even the light green here could still experience a decent amount of activity as well, and that's areas in the slightly above average precipitation zone, which goes from the Texas Arcana region up and into the northeast as well. All right, let's talk about snowfall, and I do think most of snowfall now partially this is going to be from the winter storm later this week, which is going to dump quite a bit of snow, and whenever that happens, your snowfall compared to average, it's likely either going to be slightly above average or above average. So that's something to note that should be noted as well. That's why it kind of looks a little bit odd here, but it does make sense. It does technically count into the February stats, so that's something that should be noted as well. So we do have a zone of above average snowfall from parts of Missouri through the southern half of Illinois, most of Indiana, Ohio, western Pennsylvania, parts of West Virginia, parts of Kentucky, and southwestern New York. Could see above average snowfall. Slightly above average snowfall can come from parts of the eastern half of New Mexico and Colorado, through parts of Texas, Oklahoma, Kansas. That goes all the way up into parts of the northeast as well. The southeast, I believe, we're going to stay average with snowfall. There are going to be a couple snow chances down there as well. And I do believe they're mostly going to be minor, but it might just be just enough to get you guys up to average when it comes to snowfall as well. We do have an area solid below average snowfall, and that's for parts of the upper Midwest. That includes parts of North Dakota, Minnesota, and parts of Wisconsin as well. And then you got the western U.S. In the brown shade. That's where you expect below average snowfall, and that includes most of California to the desert southwest. It even includes parts of Nevada. And then you got solid below average, which goes all the way up into parts of Washington as well. So that's your February forecast. And finally, here's the overall forecast. So we'll go from west to east. So in the northwest, I think it's going to stay quite early, but when that P&A starts to flip, I think it's going to turn a little bit more active later on. As you move a little first half, I do think Northern California can see some activity, but for the rest of the state, I think it's likely going to stay on the drier side. I don't expect California to see a whole lot of activity for the month of February. And then as you get into parts of Utah, Idaho, Arizona vicinity, I think it's just going to be closer to average precipitation, average snowfall, average temperatures in general. In the blue zone, that's just east of the Rockies here, and that includes from parts of Montana that goes all the way down to the Central Plains. I think we can certainly see some clipper systems roll through some of those areas as well, especially early on. We can certainly see some clipper systems roll through those areas. Excuse me. And then as you get into parts of the upper Midwest and the parts of the Great Lakes, there's going to be some Arctic shots. I think it's likely going to stay on the colder side up there. Even with the pattern change, most of your Arctic air could be situated up there as well, even with that little pattern change as well. I think we can still see some cold air be up there as well. But especially early on, there's definitely going to be some Arctic shots up there as well. Now for the Southern Plains, there's going to be ups and downs. With the pattern we're currently in, there's certainly going to be some ups and downs. There's going to be some warm-ups. There's going to be some cool downs. However, as you kind of get into late February, I think milder air may take a little bit more of control as well. But even at that point, there might still be some ups and downs as well when it comes to temperatures. So it'd be a little bit of a roller coaster down there as well. Areas in the light blue. Let's kind of zoom in here so we can see this a little bit better. So in the light blue, so that means snow chances. After a winter system, I can still see some snow chances in some of those areas in there. Otherwise, it'll be a little bit colder. That includes eastern Kansas, that goes through parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, northwestern Ohio, into southeastern Michigan. And again, I could definitely see some more snow chances there as well. Even if the southeast ridge is in there a little bit, that can lead to a little bit of a favorable track for some more snow chances up there as well. In a dark green, stormy periods, I would say. There may be a risk for strong to severe storms, maybe for a couple days as well. So that's something that we need to keep an eye on as well. And then you got this big red area in here that goes from Arkansas all the way up to the northeast. I think it's generally going to be an active pattern up there. Even with that little pattern change coming up, I think it could still be an active pattern. Now, I do believe uncertainty does increase when you get into northeast, especially when a pause P&A flips. But I'm a little bit more confident in the parts of the Ohio Valley back down to Arkansas. I think the pattern will likely stay active throughout most of February as well. And then the last area is the southeast. I do believe it's going to be cold early. There could be a couple snow chances, especially kind of around the Appalachian Mountains, parts of the Carolinas, maybe down to parts of Georgia. You may get to see a snow chance or two early on. However, as that PNA begins to flip, which I do believe it's going to be in late February, I think it's going to turn milder late. So you guys will be kind of getting engulfed in that eastern ridge as well. So that's kind of self-explanatory there. So that's pretty much all I have for you guys today. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Guys, like this video, hit that like button if you do like my channel. Hit the subscribe button, hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. If you guys have questions about this, put in the comment section down below. I heard you guys questions. And then again, this is a double upload day, so stay tuned later today for an updated forecast for our upcoming winter storm for parts of the central and eastern U.S. So just a little reminder real quick. And then again, I'll hope you guys enjoy the video, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Goodbye, and have a good day.